my name is Abby, and this is my restoration presentation. So I did my presentation on the restoration of the Gospel of Abraham. And the unit of study that this is from is Unit 4, which is the restoration of the priesthood and founding of the church. And it's from major concept number 4, expanded definition of the restoration of the Melchizedek. And I identified this as core doctrine because the Gospel of Abraham was restored so that spouses could be married and sealed together for eternity, and that they could progress together for eternity. And celestial marriage is a core doctrine, so that's why I identified it as such. So my first scholarly article that I found was Eternal Marriage and Family in the Old Testament by Michael A. Goodman. And this quote I really liked from this article is the Gospel of Abraham included the patriarchal order spoken of above, by which the Abrahamic covenant is perpetuated from generation to generation among the faithful. Abraham was given a promise of innumerable posterity, both in the world and out of the world. In some way which has not been made clear, the sealing powers delivered by Elijah are connected with the keys delivered by Elias that contain the dispensation of the Gospel of Abraham. And I like this quote because it connected Elias and Elijah, which I never thought about before, but it makes sense to me because the keys that they restored were so similar to each other. And my second scholarly article that I found was The Promises Made to and the Right Belonging to the Fathers by Craig James Osler. And my first prophetic talk I found was Do Not Procrastinate by Eldred G. Smith from the October General Conference in 1974. And the second prophetic talk that I found was Prepare to Meet God by Quentin L. Cook from the April General Conference in 2018. So my first D&C section that I found was D&C 110. And the verses that I liked from this were, After this, Elias appeared and committed the dispensation of the Gospel of Abraham, saying that in us and our seed all generations after us should be blessed. After this vision had closed, another great and glorious vision burst upon us. For Elijah the prophet, who was taken to heaven without tasting death, stood before us and said, Behold, the time has fully come, which was spoken of by the mouth of Malachi, testifying that he, Elijah, should be sent before the great and dreadful day of the Lord come, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to the fathers, lest the whole earth be smitten with a curse. These are verses 12 through 15. And I like these verses because it talked about the Elias and Elijah restoring the keys in the Kirkland Temple. And these are from actually a journal, one of Joseph Smith's journals. The second section that I found was D&C 52. And the verse that I liked from this section was saying, I, the Lord, will make known unto you what I will that ye should do from this time until the next conference, which shall be held in Missouri upon the land which I will consecrate unto my people, which are a remnant of Jacob, and those who are heirs according to the covenant. This is verse 2. And this verse kind of talks about how, or this whole section kind of talks about how when we make temple covenants, we are entering into that Abrahamic covenant, and that we can be heirs of Abraham and receive those same blessings. Okay, so the Joseph Smith Papers quote that I found was, Teachings about the priesthood, the Abrahamic covenant, premortal life, astronomy, and the creation overshadowed the more familiar elements of the biblical narrative and were considered significant enough for the church to accept the record in its official canon in 1880. The same status was eventually given to two lengthy letters Joseph Smith wrote during this time that further discussed the doctrine and practice of baptism for the dead. Explaining the need and procedure for making official record of each baptism, the letters, both of which were copied into the journal, discussed the ordinance in terms of an unfolding objective to provide for the salvation of the whole human family through priesthood ordinances whose efficacy reached beyond the grave. And this is from the Nauvoo Journals from December 1841 to April 1843. This is more of kind of a history of Joseph Smith. But I liked that it talked about baptism for the dead and how important that was to Joseph. Okay, so the first concept is the Gospel of Abraham was restored by Elias and is also referred to as Elijah during the restoration of the church. And the keys that he restored were those of celestial marriage and sealing families together for eternity. In the Kirkland Temple, this ordinance was restored, and because of that, we were able to be sealed to our families for eternity. And the second concept that from this presentation is when we think about the statement that Abraham was seeking the blessings of the fathers, we usually think about doing covenant work for the dead. However, it is also referring to Abraham wanting the blessings of being a father in the resurrection, which is known as eternal increase. The promise that God made to Abraham that his seed would be innumerable also applies to us, in which that when we are celestially married, we have the opportunity to continue having children in the resurrection. So my key takeaway from this is, sorry, one second, so the key takeaway is Gospel of Abraham refers to celestial marriage, being sealed to our families for eternity, eternal increase, and doing covenant work for the dead. This was restored in the Kirkland Temple by Elias, and because of that, we are able to participate in all those ordinances today if we stay temple worthy. And Elijah, he restored the keys to do work for the dead, and we are commanded to, and we will be blessed when we participate in that work today. Okay, so thank you for listening to my presentation, and I'll stop sharing my screen. But yeah, thank you. That's my presentation.